Good morning, everyone. We now discuss lesson 1 of HRM 403. So for this lesson, we have globalization, national system, multinational companies, and the national employment system and international HRM. So for the objective of this discussion, we have 3. So introduce and critically evaluate the concept of globalization, consider the role of multinational companies in the process of globalization. Sometimes it's not, sometimes some books call it MNEs or multinational enterprises. And central to the analysis of international human resource management, so IHRM, examine in more detail the nature of power relation with in MNCs and the hybridization of HRM policies in different national contexts. So you might actually wonder why you need to understand globalization, trade for that matter, why you need to understand the concept of trade. But I believe you already have in your BA 302 the different trade policies discussed by your instructor. So you already know the tariffs, GATT, WTO, among others, that comprises trade. So here, we are just going to understand how trade globalization affects the human resources of the organization. So this is, for you, this is just a form of review. So many changes are taking place in the international economy and the nature of work and management across different nations and regions. International human resource management operates within a dynamic context, and international human resource strategies and practices are best understood when located within prevailing social, political, and economic trends. A number of important concepts have been used to explain this process of change, and globalization is perhaps primary among these. International HRM focuses on the way multinational companies attempt to influence the way people work in their operations across border. And globalization presents new and significant challenges for managing and regulating work on an international basis. So at the core of economic globalization is the increased movement of capital and labor. So technically, human resources are somehow, like Filipinos, are all over the world already because of globalization. Or sometimes we are here in the Philippines, but we are working in a multinational company. So increased movement of capital and labor, of finance, goods, and services between countries. This represents both a major challenge as well as a primary catalyst for change in international HRM and employment relations. So we examine the nature of contemporary globalization. You might wonder why they call it contemporary. The word contemporary means is subject to change, because even globalization has started way back actually, but the word globalization was just recently coined by people, by researchers rather. So subject to change, because even until now, globalization is still happening with the advancement of the World Wide Web, the internet, among other technology. Globalization continues to evolve. And consider the broad implication for management and work, particularly with respect to multinational companies. We look at the role of multinational companies or corporations as key players in globalization and how their actions are related to particular features of their home and host national location, which are often understood in cultural and institutional terms. So home is where the multinational corporation originated. Hosts is where they engage business. So if the home of Coca-Cola company is in the US, then they have business in the Philippines. Then their host is the Philippines. Okay? So definition of globalization and globalization of markets. So I'm not going to read everything on the screen. It's for you to digest it because like I said, this is just a review for you. So there are three drivers of globalization. So declining trade, investment barriers, and technological change. So international trade, of course, when a firm export goods or services to consumers in another country. So that's why we have imported products in our grocery items like wine, chocolates, among apparels. So you are engaged in trade if you are exporting goods or importing goods for that matter. Foreign direct investment or FDIs, of course, when a firm invests resources in business activities outside its home country, many of the barriers to international trade took the form of high tariffs on imports of manufactured goods. So why is it that Coca-Cola, and I mentioned Coca-Cola a while ago, so let's continue using Coca-Cola for as an example. Coca-Cola is a US-based company. And then they see that they have market in the Philippines because the Filipino loves to drink soda, their Coca-Cola products, especially during occasion, fiesta. We love fiesta, birthdays, among other occasions we have, or every time Filipino eats their meals, so, or during merienda, snack time. Coca-Cola is somehow present as the, let's just say, a chosen beverage. When before they have an business in the Philippines, they always import products, Coca-Cola products in the Philippines, but they say that if I keep on importing products to the Philippines, maybe the demand will decline because there is tax on imported products, there are a lot of trade barriers. So why not create a bottling company in the Philippines? I have the market. The technology of the Philippines can in making Coca-Cola is there. I have the resources, cheap labor. Why not invest? So let's just say Coca-Cola decided to create a bottling company, a manufacturing company of Coca-Cola in the Philippines. So when Coca-Cola decided to create a business in the Philippines, it's called FDI or foreign direct investment. They really put up physical asset in a host country. So that's FDI. Anyways, you already know that, right? And of course, another driver for globalization is technological change. So technological change has made it a tangible reality. Since the end of World War II, the world has seen major advances in communication, information, processing, and transportation technology, including the explosive emergence of the internet, like I said a while ago, the World Wide Web. Telecommunication is creating a global audience. Transportation is creating a global village. Um, I believe most of you belong to the Gen Zers. A few probably millennials because they are late probably in enrolling or have stopped schooling and then comes back. So let's just say that let's just generalize this, that you are the Gen Zers. You belong to the Gen Zers or the Generation Z. I do not know if you have seen how telecommunication has evolved. If you have, I'm not that old, guys, but the millennials actually are the, as they say, the greatest generation when it comes to technology because we have seen and witnessed, and not only witnessed but experienced some of the older technology like the Walkman. If you have Walkman during my high school years, you're already someone who is branded as rich kid. We call it rich kid now, right? Before we don't know what it is called. We just know that you are during that time, or you belong to the elite family. And if you have cell phones, like the first mobile phone that I was able to touch and experience, not text, not even text, but call, is a Motorola phone that is way bulky. It's like it's really bulky, guys. It how you grip it. If you have tried gripping San Miguel Beer Pilsen, na siya ka bulky. Na nakadako ang cellphone sa una din. Taas kay antenna yung kinahanglan ka mo adtog layo-layong taas lugar para makasignal ka. And then it has evolved. And then here comes Nokia. And then na siya nindot na screen. The Motorola has only one-liner screen. Imagine reading a message in a one-line screen. So, sige kag forward para mabasa niyo ang tanang message. And then I experienced, they said a Walkman, and then the Discman. We call it the Discman. So it's not anymore the tape. When you want to rewind it, you have to use your ball pen, the Panda ball pen during that time. So the Walkman, you have CDs. We experienced paying 2 pesos per music to be burn on our CDs, and you have to have CD player for it to be able to play. And then here comes iPod, the iPod, no, the iShuffle, it looks like a thin USB type, and then you can download music in it. So that's how it evolves. And then after that, the iPod. So that's when Apple has introduced its product, and then here comes Sony, among other sunod-sunod na siya. And then we have also experienced floppy disk in terms of storing your output in class. Floppy disk 3/4, 1/2. Hi, hassle kay siya. Unlike today, wherein it is really the USB is really the universal USB. That is a code, right? The abbreviation, wherein it's not only the USB but your phone. The memory card of your phone can be used as storing message, and then communication has evolved. Before we don't have only text. You have to have a load. That's why you are a rich kid if you have phone, because there's no only text before. Your 300 peso is really good for 300 messages only. So imagine that. And now you have only call. Even if you don't have load, as long as your phone can capture data, or you can have free Wi-Fi from some public places, then you can send messages, right? Or you can listen to your class using just your phone. Before, we cannot make our term paper or among other things that we have in class if we do not log in to an internet cafe. So telecommunication has actually evolved. And of course, along with its evolution comes the evolution of how human resources should be treated. Human resources should be trained, because globalization actually changes how the platform, how human resources should adapt also to globalization. So that's all for the drivers of globalization. Now we proceed to technological change. Perhaps the most, these are the changes in technology that we have experienced actually. So for the first, perhaps the most single important innovation has been developed is the microprocessor, which enable the explosive growth of high power, low cost computing. So the computer actually, the calculator is a microprocessor. It's not manual, it's calculator. So from calculator to our modern technology processor, vastly increasing the amount of information that can be processed by individuals and firms. The microprocessor also underlies many recent advances in telecommunication technology, like I said a while ago. The World Wide Web has developed into the information backbone of global economy. That's why you, as a future human resource managers or HR practitioners or owners of business, you're still dealing with people. Make sure that you make use or you take advantage of what you have learned in the internet or the World Wide Web, not just focusing yourself on social media or you have this FOMO, fear of missing out. No, um, inform yourself with data. Learn how to filter information that are necessary for your growth and in your career in the future. Not just focusing on social media, wherein some things that are posted are just pieces of trash that only increases our anxiety or insecurities, right? So get rid of those, but and focus on positive information that can help you with your growth. So in economic terms, the most important are probably development of commercial jet aircraft. So the commercial jet aircraft, because of this commercial jet aircraft, we can now go from one place to another with less um, amount of time. Imagine the distance between Dumaguete and Manila. If you are riding on a plane, is just 2 hours. It is Bayawan is further because you have to travel by bus like 3 hours, and then Manila is just 2 hours. So that is how transportation technology has helped in globalization and for us to be in one place in a less amount of time. But of course, during the pandemic, we cannot just travel even if we want to, even if we have the means and the ways, because we can easily get sick if we are get the virus. So then globalization of production, technological innovation have facilitated the globalization of market. Low-cost global communication networks such as the World Wide Web. Actually, low-cost na ang World Wide Web na communication. Like, makatawag na kasi mong loved ones outside of the country using different platforms like Facebook, FaceApp, among other social networking sites na pwede mag-video call, di ba? Unlike sa una nga, telegrama pa or snail mail, or if you use NDD or NDD na ang tawag ng kana gani international call nga baling mahala per hour, per minute, imagine per minute baling mahala. So ina na siya, nindot ang technological change. But of course, dili man pud we cannot say that despite its advantages and benefits, there are also people who does not like globalization, technological change, because how it affects people, how it affects nature, how it affects the human populace as a whole. Technology are just tools and materials. How we use it in at our advantage to the point that we are not abusing nature and the environment we are in, because at the end of the day, we are living here. So we need also to take note that despite technological advantages, despite all the luxuries that we have, the convenience that we have, we should not forget that we have to take care of nature. Kaya mabalik naman yapon na to if we don't, diba? So these are the 10-point checklist of some of the key trends commonly seen in characterizing the recent period of economic globalization. So the first is national and regional economies are increasing, dominated by new global system of economic coordination and control in which competition and strategic choices are organized at the global level. So a country or a nation should think that how it can compete with the world. If you have heard over the news or read because everybody's on Facebook or other social Twitter. There are actually good news in Twitter or news in Twitter, Facebook, or other social networking sites that you are using that we are our nation is and or should compete that of the world, or we compete on a global level. We will not think our business strategies and choices nga pang Pilipinas ra pud ba dapat um ato ang mga strategies and competition, how we compete is not only on the local level but on the international level. The internationalization of process of production, distribution, exchange means that national economies are less distinct and markets are more global. So the recent period has been characterized by a particular neoliberal policy agenda and by the rapid growth and influence of processes of financialization. There is a decreased ability on the part of nation state to fully control their own economic system. This is actually true. We cannot really see that we can really claim that we control our own economy, because one way or the other, we are affected by what is happening globally. So as the ability of nation states to regulate economic activities declines, the global market is increasingly dominate national economic policy. So for instance, guys, the increase in during this time, of course, during the time that I am making this PowerPoint presentation and making this video, there is a news that in Europe there was a panic buying of fuel, gasolina, because limited na ang resources, ni mahal na siya kaayo. And that is very, very far. That is miles away from us. But we are affected by it, by the increase of prices on our fuel. Imagine a 1.5 or 150 pesos increase in in gasoline, and then 2 pesos and 5 centavos increase in crude oil. And as it was flashed on the news, that is since January, today, as of yesterday, it was yesterday that I heard the news. Yesterday was October 5, so that we have reference. It has been 15 pesos since January, that there is a gradual increase in the prices of fuel. However, recently this month, starting September, almost every week ang increase sa gasolina. And we are buying fuel outside the country. So if there is an increase in demand of fuel around the globe, and then there is few fuel, what happens to prices? So that's what happened. The prices increase. So may anak na sadta nga nganong ni mahal ang saging kay mahal ang gasolina. O, di ba? You might say ngano di ay ngano di ay saging gasolina ba giluto sa saging. No, it's not, but it is fuel that is used to transport the banana. So somehow it is interrelated. Okay? So there is an increase in the number and power of supranational bodies and institutions such as the European Union or the G8 group of countries. You might ask on something G8. There's another video for this in BA 302. These are central banks of 8 countries na mga dako nga economy helps, and they are organized to help during the 2007, 8, 9 global financial crisis. And of course, you're familiar with the European Union. The European Union, one of their aim is to have one currency. We also have, actually, not the European Union, but the ASEAN integration, which is going to be reported holistically and exhaustively by the first presenter. So we have ASEAN integration. In the ASEAN integration, the Association of Southeast Asian Nation, we are more on the easing of trade, easy transfer of human resources from one country to another nga dili na kakinahanglan og visa, okay na ang passport, and then sharing of technology. So mo po na siya sa atua, but we don't have a single currency. Lahi po ng atua. So that is on Asian integration. They will be explain that to us, the first presenter, exhaustively. So let's not dig into that. Let's let them report. So there is a significant improvement in methods of transport and communication. We have already give this as an example, which allow for the rapid movement of people, goods, and particular information across national borders. So what is new in our transport of goods now? We have Food Panda, Grab, Tuk Tuk, among other. Oh, let's just improve transport of goods. We can enjoy our favorite meal at the convenience of our home. Transport, we have Grab Trike already. Huh? There is an increased integration of newly industrialized countries. So China, India, and Indonesia. Actually, India, China, and Indonesia has been a hub for FDI. Hub, HUB, hub for FDI. Dili kayo ang Philippines, but napunta sa Pilipinas actually because we have economic zones. But China, Indonesia, and India have been an economic hub for foreign direct investments because of cheap labor, and they have also the resources there. And they are, because of this, their country is, in terms of economic measures, their country is actually boosting. And China, as of the moment, since 2001, 2000, year 2000, their economy has been at par that of US and Europe in terms of economic measures or economic output. So for workers, globalization brings both challenges and opportunities. There is no doubt that the heightened nature of international competition has led to pressure to cut costs and maximize quality and efficiency. In particular, this has led to job losses in European countries and to firms reporting to offshore activities such as locating their customer service departments and call center in India and the Philippines, where labor costs are lower, leaving workers in many countries more vulnerable with adverse consequences for the quality of their employment. Like in the United States, there has been a growth in a precarious employment as workers experience great insecurity at work as a result of increase in temporary contracts, outsourcing productions, and a decline of union representation and long-term benefits to suspension and healthcare. Like I said, there may be advantages to globalization or globalizing the market, but there are also disadvantages. So, like what I have read a while ago, workers become insecure. Imagine, guys, most of our contact centers here, our clients are US clients. And then, sila man unta mo trabaho ani kung napa ni sa ilang nasod, di ba? However, they outsource some of their activities because they see that it is of great advantage not only to their company but to customers po nila. That's why they hire Filipinos to do the outbound and inbound calls to cater to the customer needs. So, mana maka-create siya insecurity sa mga tao. Even for us siguro if atong company diri ato na sa laing nasod mo tuko, di ba? Yan na po ang iyang disadvantage. But if you are a worker, if you are you know that your skills or your job is not that in demand anymore, then you acquire new skills. You don't limit yourself. We can have multiple skills and expertise in order for us to be competitive not only on the local market pool of employees, but also in the international market. So neoliberal globalization has also contributed to the spread of informal work and employment around the world. The informal economy is a major source of employment, especially in Asia. Work from home. Or, well, what's your trabaho? Online, nara ko sa balay, mga part-time. So informal economy in Asia, Africa, and other Latin America country. and indistinctive insofar as it falls outside legal and regulatory arrangement that govern employment in the formal sector. In 2011, he points out that the rise of new precariat as more flexible employment patterns, reduced level of job security, and weakened labor market protection render increased numbers of workers, particularly young workers, migrant workers, and Black and minority ethnicity workers more vulnerable. So this happens in siguro sa atong country lahi pod kay most of we don't have much foreign workers, but when we are talking about America or the Europe, they have lots of young workers, migrant workers, Black and the minority ethnic workers. So we should say if these people are in the labor force and they are competitive, they compete with the American workers or the European workers, and then because of flexible employment pattern like part-time here, part-time there, it creates insecurities also to the American workers or the European workers. So it weakened their labor market and then increase the number of decrease the number of protection of the number of workers, like their health. They become more vulnerable, and once they become more vulnerable, somehow exploitation happens and then abuse happens to the worker, like di sila bayran or i-threaten sila. So in our country, we don't have much of this. We have minority workers, yes, but we don't have much of migrant workers. A few, yes, but not much, because we are a developing country. Unlike them, they are a developed country. So people who wants greener pasture goes to these developed countries. Here, what we have young workers, like young workers or minor, if they are minor, if their employers are abusive, one way or the other, they are going to be abused because they are minor, they're not required to be paid as PhilHealth because they cannot avail of it pa kay minor pa sila. But if the employers are good employers, in one way or the other, they will develop these people, diba? Depende ra pod lagi na siya sa imuhang amo. But if you are going to be future owners of businesses, make sure that you develop your workers as well. So let's continue with the 3 more. A new international division of labor is emerging in which unskilled manufacturing work shift to poorer, less developed countries, whereas research and development activities are centered in the richer or more advanced industrial sites. This is actually true, guys. That's why there are a lot of manufacturing firm in China, in India, and in our country. And then the researches are done in highly industrialized countries. But we have research actually in our country. We have good scientists actually. Wala pa siguro sila na fully discover. Labor mobility is increasing on an international scale. A significant number of people migrate to other countries in search of better work and better lives. This is actually true, especially like developing countries like ours. We go to highly industrialized countries to seek for greener pasture and better lives. So we seek better lives to the in a certain country to give also better life to the people in our country. Without our OFWs, actually lisod po datong ekonomiya, because the OFWs are actually provides a huge chunk of foreign currencies in our country that help stabilize our country in terms of balance of trade, diba? So we export human capital, and when Filipinos are anywhere in the world, they are somehow praised because they work well and they work good. So goods and services are increasingly cultural homogenized around the globe, symbolized most powerfully by the spread of global brands such as McDonald's, Starbucks, coffee shops, and Nike shoes. So actually, when you're talking about McDonald's, you might probably see this or see watching vlogs comparing McDonald's in different countries. McDonald's in the Philippines have rice. McDonald's in other countries does not have. McDonald's in the Philippines have rice with spaghetti and chicken with it. Other countries does not have that. McDonald's homogenize its product where they operated because they adapt to the market of that country. If McDonald's does not do this, then McDonald's will not be famous globally. The same with Starbucks. So kanang Starbucks nato dira sa Dumaguete karon, mo na siya usually gina-order sa mga Pilipino. Kay mo man ang naadira. So if you if you actually go to Starbucks in other country, then when you order something, you can actually personalize your frap or coffee or your drinks for that matter. And of course, Nike shoes. Everybody knows this. So that's those are the 10-point checklist on some of the key trends commonly seen as characterizing the recent period of economic globalization. So we now go to globalization and MNC or MNE. I already tell you what MNE is. So without a doubt, one of the most notable features of the international economy is the growing spread and influence of MNCs. So as mentioned a while ago, Nike, McDonald's, and Starbucks are all MNCs or MNEs. Together with the expansion of international trade and growth of international capital markets, the increased power of MNCs has been linked to the emergence of a so-called borderless world. So the borderless world in which national boundaries and state controlling them have less economic significance than the decisions of transnational business elites and financial markets. So the definition of MNCs, a multinational corporation, has facilitates and other assets in at least one country other than its home country. A multinational company generally has offices and or factories in different countries and a centralized head office where they coordinate global management. So, and then MNEs is any business that has productive activities in one or more countries. So McDonald's, they have productive activities in one or more countries. The same with Coca-Cola, the same with Nike. So they have productive activities. And then the United Nations Centers on Transnational Corporation estimates that there are around 61,000 multinationals in the world controlling around, imagine, 900,000 subsidiaries. So one multinational company, let's just say one multinational company, they have multiple subsidiaries. Ila haragya po na ay, if it is an umbrella, na ay katong tumoy gani sa umbrella kanang nastungaan that holds the umbrella, and then katong mga nasa kilid-kilid mo to iyang mga subsidiaries. Di ba? Like Jollibee Food Corporation. Subsidiary niya ang Greenwich, ang Chowking, ang Red Ribbon, I believe. What else? Chooks to Go. Inana ba? Under siya sa umbrella ni Jollibee Food Corporation. Manginasal. Ilasad na. And Jollibee Food Corporation is a multinational company. It has now operations in other countries, in other Asian countries aside from the Philippines, European countries, and the US also. So these firms makes annual sales, katong gi-mention ako, 61,000 multinationals, and they have around 900,000 subsidiaries. These firms makes annual sales of 19 trillion and directly employ around 54 million people. So the stock of FDI controlled by MNCs increased steeply from 560 billion in 1980. 1980 ni siya nga reference guys ha. So 560 billion in 1980 and then 14.9 trillion in 2008. This data is taken from UNC PAD 2009. Imagine the increase. This was driven mainly with the sharp growth in cross-border border mergers and acquisitions over this period, which rapidly increased the extent in which MNCs are spread across countries, although the rate of these deals has subsided since. So during that time, manang grabe kayo ang increase sa MNCs because of mergers and mergers and acquisitions. So merger, when two companies merge together, and then the name of the mas taas og asset ang mo retain. Just like what happened with PNB and Allied Bank. So karon wala na yung Allied Bank, under na siya sa PNB. Tanang clients ni Allied Bank, PNB nang tawag. Wala na yung Allied Bank, di ba? I think that's an example of merger. When we say acquisition, merger to siya. If nag-merge siya, unless gi-acquire siya. Kung acquire, mao nang pareha na nitabo ni Jollibee Ford Corporation, iyang gipalit si Mang Inasal. So kana acquire na siya. Wala na sila nag-merge. Kay ni-retain raman ang entity, ang ngalan ni Mang Inasal. Mang Inasal ramang gihapon. So iyan ang gi-acquire si Mang Inasal. So Jollibee Ford Corporation na ang tag-iya ni Mang Inasal. Kung merger, mura kasal ra ba? Usa na sila apelyido. You know this already because this is also present in accounting. So dapat hinumduman na siya ninyo kay if you are going to be an employee in the future or businessman in the future, you might actually deal with this transaction. Like your company merged with another company, if you are a business owner, and if you are an employee, mingon mo, ay, merger, or gipalitan ni kuan. O, diba? So, kabalo mong ina na ang ma-happen. And then, samot na kamo kay mga human resources major mo, you need also to understand this because this affects the manpower of the organization, what happens during mergers and what happens during acquisition, because sometimes mergers and acquisitions creates insecurity on the employees. Kaya sila kabaloon sa may tabo nila after such thing happened in the organization. So you as an HR practitioner in the future should know how to handle this situation and how to convey properly without creating tension to your co-workers. Okay? So one of the implications of this trend for human resource management is the emergence of highly flexible cadre of international managers. So out of this globalizations, MNEs, MNCs, is the trend now nga emergence of new and highly flexible cadre or group or troop of international managers capable of implementing the complex strategies involved. So these are you in the future. The transnational solution predicts that instead of having careers that are driven by vertical moves up in the organization hierarchy, so karon, for us, for instance, kaming mga teachers, kaming mga educators in the academe, among move up is dapat vertical nga I cannot educate people or I cannot teach the subjects like trigonometry, physics, because that is not how I was trained. But you as a human resources practitioner in the future, you're not supposed to be driven by vertical movement in your career. Dili ra paapra ba? But rather, the focus will be shift on managing lateral moves and aim at broadening and sharpening experience, the way in which managers are allocated to assignments and temporary projects will become more cross-functional, cross-business, and cross-geographical. So if you are an HR practitioner trained in the Philippines, you're going to be an HR practitioner, probably a recruitment per employee in Singapore. So lahi po dito, di ba? And then after that assignment, after that project, if you're done with that project, you're going to be transferred as a recruitment people, part of the recruitment team in the US. So you're still on HR, but your expertise now is not just vertical, but rather cross-border and then multicultural na ka, you understand the people in the Philippines, you understand how the people in Singapore works, what are the types of people or what are the types of employees, maybe the American workers are during the recruitment period. Kaya makabalo makaunsa sila. So, dili lang inyo vertical, but more on, you're still an HR practitioner, but you are assigned on different culture, different geographic location because of temporary assignments that are assigned to you. And because of this, you can create actually decisions, HR decisions and HR strategies that does not only focus on the culture, on an environment you are in. Like Filipino man ka, dili lang ka mag-focus sa Filipino, kasabot na ka sa mga lain-laing mga geographic, social, environmental, sa mga lain-laing tao sa kalibutan. Kaya dagan na makanabalaan because of the experiences you are engaged into. Okay? And so far as MNC seeks advantage from both their home and host location, they can be seen as political actors. The MNCs and the MNEs are called they can be seen as a political actor using power to shape the condition under which they conduct their productive activities. Actually, these are actually true. Multinational companies actually shape and influence. When we say political actors, politics influences how society should and are expected to act. Imagine the entertainment industry. You're familiar with K-pop, right? You're familiar with a lot of things that has been bombarded to you via social media. Actually, these companies, these businesses are actually shaping up how we should act. They condition us how we should act or how it should be, how relationship should be, how your standard of choosing your partner should be. Sometimes you are influenced by this because these multinational companies are influencing how we should act. I hope you get it. I know you get it anyway. So the next topic is MNCs, the state and national effect. So MNCs need states. So United States of the Philippines, without the states is the states here are the countries. MNCs need states to provide the infrastructural basis for their continued existence, both physical infrastructure in the form of the built environment and also social infrastructure in the form of legal protection and private property. Institutional mechanism to provide a continuous supply of educated workers, among other. So in particular, states have the potential to determine two factors of crucial importance to MNCs. So the first factor is the term in which they may have access to market and or resources. So why do you think McDonald's is present in our city, in Dumaguete? Because they have the market. They have the resources, not just the raw materials, but they have the human resources needed. We already have what? 3 McDonald's. Imagine 2 McDonald's within downtown and walking distance na sila. Yung human makaginansya ra gyapon sila both. Gets ninyo? Same with Jollibee. Ano naman silang naadira? Kanai markets, kanai resources. And the second is the rules of operation in which they must comply when operating in a specific national territory. So McDonald's is McDonald's is a multinational corporation. It is operating in the Philippines. So they need to comply whatever the rules our country has. Because this is a specific territory. This is not US anymore. So they had, muna ilang gina-consider. Before sila mo put up business in another country, these are the things that they have to consider. Starbucks, nga nang dugay kitang na Starbucks. Bago rata na Starbucks. Maybe because they may have the market or they may have the market but not enough market. 'Di ba? Starbucks opened katong nauso na gay kayo ang kapi-kapi, tea, no, 'di ba? Mag-post dayon. And the resources also. Then okay na sila sa ato ang mga ordinances and then the legal systems that we have. Okay? So how it affects them. It is often said that the major difference between HRM, human resource management in the US and in the Europe, is the degree to which it influenced and determined by state regulation. So this is between Europe and the US, the human resource management. Companies in Europe generally have a narrower scope of strategic choice in this respect than those of the US. Ingon sila, in Europe, there is a greater regulation on recruitment and dismissal. Sa ilahan ni, more formalization of education, certification, and quasi-legal aspect to industrial relations framework, including legislative requirements on pay, forms of employment contract, health and safety, hours of work, as well as rights to trade union representation and requirements to operate consultation or co-determination arrangements. EU member states also seek to regulate the labor market from which organizations draw their pool of employees. For example, through various interventions in education, lifelong learning, and tax incentives, in this way, states shape and influence business strategy and organization and reflect distinctive way of doing things, where particular institutions and practices are bundled together. So this is by Weiss in 2003. So grabe ang ilahab. Actually, inanim po sa ato. Why is it that our school offers these types of courses? We have major in human resource, we have financials, we have a lot of courses offered. Nga naman, natay tourism, natay hospitality management. Because mauni ang kinahanglan sa atuang mga businesses. Diba? Why is it that we have engineers? Kay mauman ang kinahanglan. Inana sa Europe kanang formalize ang ilaha. Okay? Stricto lang sa ilaha kay ganahan sila nga if ikaw nga multinational company ganahan ka motukod og business ani nga state within the European Union, or you will know what are the types of employees ang naa dira, unsang educational systems ang naa dira. There is this, I don't know, Netherlands I think, wherein they pay their students nga mo eskwela og college. Nga naman, kay wala man kayo mga eskwela og college sa ilaha. Diri sa ato ang muhilak kung dili makasulod, di ba? Dili makasulod og sa ato ang eskwelahan, muhilak, tukuy og ginikanan, kay ganahan mga eskwela og college. Whereas sa ilaha, bayran pa sila para mga eskwela. So if I am a multinational company, nga ganahan ko akong mga trabahante, dapat college graduate tanan, niadto ko sa, I hope it's Netherlands. Hopefully I'm correct. Just Google it, guys. I-Google po na ako para kung correct ko. But I've heard that Netherlands, ato ko, dili kong atong Netherlands, di ba? Kaya ganahan ako college tanan niya. Dito, gamay ra kayo ang eskwela college. Ato na lang ko sa lain na state. Oh, inana po. And this has an effect on the nation. This has an effect on the state and on the multinational companies. Pod. So there are two perspectives. How we understand this home and hosts effects is central to appreciating the constraints and the opportunities that managers in multinational corporations face in attempting to implement international HR strategies and practices across borders. These are the two major analytical categories often utilized to explain the importance of these national dimensions. The first is the cultural theories. The second is the institutional theories. So national cultural theories is said to impact organizations by selecting and framing the particular set of organizational values and norms that managers perceive as being consistent with the basic assumptions developed within their countries as a product of early childhood, formative experience, and education, language, religion, and geography. So these cultural theories is, of course, by culture, lahi-lahi jud siya. So when you are an HR practitioner from a Philippine institution, and then you transfer to another company, let's just say within Asia lang, in China maybe, or in Singapore maybe, probably you will have a culture shock. Because lahi naman po siya. Mag-adapt na po ka. So that's on culture theories. So the culturalist perspective consider cultural values to be deep-seated and enduring. What does that mean? Deep-seated na ano na siya nato. Filipinos, unsa matong culture? Jud. Grabe kita kag family-oriented. Culture na siya. Deep-seated. Diba? I don't know if it's culture or values, but the two can be interchanged. The two are almost always interchanged. Like I said, I don't know if it's culture or values, guys. You can comment this with this video if it's culture or values. Like, as part of our norms in the Philippines is that paskwilahon ang anak kay para makatabang sa pamilya, paskwilahon ang kinamagulangan para makatabang sa manghod. Mga inana ba? Or paskwilahon ang anak kay para manindot ang balay, maayo ang balay. Murag apil na siya sa atoang norms. Murag normal na siya diri sa atoa nga inana nga atoa, in which dili unta paskwilahon para mulambo ang iyahang life. Usahay manggod ginahimo og insurance policy ang mga anak. Yes, we're supposed to be grateful with our parents kay gipaskwela gud ta. I am grateful with my parents kay niabot ko ani nga state karon sa life. But dili unta himuon nga himo insurance policy, di ba? Kay imo man siyang gipaskwela kay para mulambo ang iyang kinabuhi. Iyahang kinabuhi. Or usahay kay maikog ta sa tong ginikanan kay mukuha ta og kurso nga kanang ilang ganahan dili atong ganahan. I'm not sure if that's, and somehow embedded na sila sa atoa. Murag seated ba? Murag apil na siya sa atuang psyche at sa atuang subconscious. Anyways, that's just an example. It's up for you to agree or not agree with it. That is just how I observe things. Deep-seated and enduring, to vary systematically between societies and to condition what is considered acceptable organizational practices. So it's not only a country that has culture. Organization has culture as well. And then culture is somehow gipractice na siya, munang nahimo na siyang culture ana nga organization. The high school I came from, one of its values embedded to us was that every time you see your teacher, because that's high school, they are called teachers, you have to kiss their hands, not kiss their hands, in English, mu'amin. So even if we graduated already and we see our teachers in high school way back, mu'amin na gyapon mi, maskin makita na mo siya sa downtown, maskin asa na mo siya makitaan during na mga occasions, mu'amin na gyapon kay mo man na among naandan sa una. And then we call our elder schoolmates, like kung first year ka, second year sila for ana, ate or kuya, unless mingon sila nga ayaw tawga. But i-practice sa amo nga muna among tawag sa ilaha. So na-embed po na siya sa amo. Kumato siya. And then attention to culture has an intuitive appeal to practicing managers. Kamupuhon. for whom it serves as a convenient reference for many frustrating difficulties they have experienced when working with people from other countries. Katong example ako ganina nga, if you're from the Philippines, mabalhin ka o Singapore, maglibog jud ka. Working with people from other countries, the source of which they do not fully comprehend because that is not your culture, that is not your environment, that is not the things you know how it's done and how it works. So culture shock. The difference in national culture can affect organization in many ways and be widely seen as central to international HRM. Munang need sabton sa mga HR ang culture. So if you, diba, as I mentioned a while ago, your development in career is not just vertical, but pwede siya lateral. When you are assigned to different countries and you need to understand different cultures, mudagan man imong knowledge, yes, in the first run, you will have confusions because this is not how it should be kay wala nimo naandan, but as in the long run makasabot mo ka lahi ni mga tao diri sa US, lahi ni mga tao diri, lahi na siya sa amuha, so I should not compare them nga magsamot kog kalibog, but I should appreciate their culture nga inani jud ni sila and make strategies on how to motivate them or how to hire them or how to pay them. Inana. According to Sparrow and Hilthrop, they have observed that MNCs will vary in the extent to which they recognize national cultural diversity. If manager believes the impact of national culture to be minimal, so if manager believes that the impact of national culture to be minimal, as in the case of the parochial organization, the general approach will be to ignore differences in employees' values, norms, and preferences. So parochial is kanang sa church nga wala sila they don't care much kung asa pa kagikan difference in values and norms and preferences. Parochial may tawag na nila. So sa ila hapon na siya, if inana imong bili, bahala mo dirahon sa inyong culture, basta inani good ni siya, inani ako ang how I do not recognize or wala ra kay impact ng culture sa ako ang business, bahala unsa pa kadira. So mo po na ilaha, mo po na iyaha. On the other hand, if managers view all other ways of doing things as inferior po ha, lahi po ni siya ha, as in the ethnocentric organization, their policy will be to minimize the impact of cultural diversity. So inahay po nila itong parochial, lahi itong ethnocentric. For instance, recruiting homogeneous workforce. Pari-pariha ra. The tendency to hold one's own way as being the best is, of course, often enforced as stereotypes of other cultures and nationalities. This one, kani siyang ethnocentric. Imuhang policy will be to minimize the impact of cultural diversity. This happens to the first job I had. They are not hiring, I think I use this example to other subjects, but they're not hiring employees or people if they are not Bisaya. Bisaya jud mi tanan didto maski na amis Manila, Bisaya jud man dili mi maka-learn dayog Tagalog kay Bisaya man imong kastorya yung mga clients pod kay galabi ra pong Bisaya or naay roots nga Bisaya. Nganong Bisaya ra man ilahang i-hire? It's because they considered Bisaya as kugihan. Which is true man pod. I agree with that. I hope you do. Kinsa may naas Manila nga mantrabaho o pagka-helper iba galabi Bisaya, di ba? So inana ilahang conditioning. So kato ila is in their recruitment, hiring and recruitment sa part sa hiring nila and recruitment nila, wala jud kay Tagalog. #guard Bisaya or naa kay lahi nga Bisaya. Kay mustura na mo mabisaya ra mo sa office. Wala kasabot kay ninyo. So inana siya. So kato siya at ang tawag ato is ethnocentric. Minimize the impact of cultural diversity. So homogeneous ang workforce, puro Bisaya niya ato. And then kay kuan ang good if inana puro mo Bisaya, kung ang galantaw ninyo is outsider, ang tawag na stereotypes man siya, ma-stereotype man mo, ma-judge mo. Anyway, judgment is always there. It's up to you na pampod if you're going to believe it or ignore it. And then finally, If manager, katuha na ay parochial, ilaha is general approach will be ignore the difference in employee. Katong gani ethnocentric is hiring homogeneous employees. And then the third one is if manager recognize both cultural diversity as well as potentially positive impacts, as in the case of synergistic organization, the human resource policy will tend to place greater emphasis upon the creation of a truly international workforce, using similarities and differences among the nationalities to create new forms of management and organization. So kani ikatulo, synergistic, which is mao na jud ni siya karon nga panahon. If you want to be recognized globally and if you want to enter in the global market, you need to have a synergistic workforce. Dili kay parochial, dili kay ethnocentric siya, because you are self-limiting your organization. You as an HR practitioner po, inyo pong mind-setting, dili po dapat parochial, dili po dapat ethnocentric, dapat synergistic, because diversity can actually creates unity, and then makahelp po siya create new forms of management and organization. So using similarities and differences among culture. So mao to siya tanan sa culture theories. Culture pa to siya. Now we go to the institutionalist perspective. So this perspective emphasizes that management and business have different institutional foundation across countries. Muna ilang belief. The key institutions are the state, the legal system, and the financial system, and the family. Considered in combination, such as institution constitute the distinctive social organization of a country and its economy. The institutionalist perspective provides the means for correcting some of the problems associated with the ideas of cultural relativists. Here, the emphasis is on normative adaptation of the cultural rules to which organization conform. But these rules are now understood as social rules embedded in institutional processes more than mental constructs carried out in people's heads. So, a central concept with the institutionalist approach is that of the business system, quote unquote, the business system. They believe that this concept ties together in a coherent way the historical, cultural, and institutional processes that shape national or regional economies. It enables a focus on the way in which state, financial industrial relations, and other systems combine together to influence organizational practices. So, dahil po just a cultural theory, di ba? So, kani siya is coherent man. So, work together, cohesive, coherent. Nga historical, cultural, institutional processes shape national and regional economies. I think this is actually in how our country works. Kaya winutang historical, we are greatly influenced by the Spanish colonialization wherein they have been in our country for 300 years, right? We are greatly influenced by the Western culture. Even some of our laws are copy-pasted maybe or are derived from some of the US laws. Nga usahay dili pud siya muhaom dayon-dayon sa atoa kay nayo tay ato ang inherent culture jud pud. But however, as a country how it shapes the regional and national economies are coherent with this history atong culture and other institutional processes. So if these are managed well, along with how people are managed in our country, one way or the other, we can be actually a developed country. In 1970s, the Philippines is actually one of the tiger in Asia. Para malipay mo nga, dili lang ang tiger sa Asia, ang Japan, or unsa pa dira ang country nga inyo nitalaan. But we actually was once a tiger in Asia. Miming na siguro. Hopefully, pohon, may mo na po tang tiger in Asia as we continue to develop. So we can immediately see a number of obvious ways in which national institution might help shape and determine international HR practices. The role of the state, role, unsay role giplay ni Philippines, the state, the financial state system of our country, the national system of education. So the incorporation of K to 12 is actually helping us. Ang uban mingon negative siya kay hasol, madugay, madugay, madugay. But actually, it's actually helping us, especially for you young people nga na may plano nga mohawa sa Pilipinas because you want to experience other countries ng trabaho, unsa didto inana, seek for greener pastures. Dili na mo eskwela usog kay kompleto na siya. Kay ay during our time wala kami senior high, no? If naami mga batchmates nga moadto og like the likes of Australia or New Zealand, dapat pa sila muskwela usog og 2 years. Kay kulang ilang na eskwelahan diri sa Pilipinas kay didto na may K to 12 naman. And diri sa tuwa dili pa man. So kinahanglan sila muskwela usog og 2 years para ra mapariha ang ilahang curriculum didto og diri sa atua. So there's actually something good with K to 12. So kapil man na siya sa educational system na siya and training. So if gatinarong ra jud mo during your senior high, supposedly naa naman mo skills acquired. Like if you are an ABM, if you're an ABM and then you took NC3 in bookkeeping because you have accountancy subject, then when you graduate ABM and then you want to work as a cashier maybe or in the accounting part of the accounting, okay na kaayo mo kay na naman mo yung certificate ana nakaskwela na mo ana kabalo naman mo ana, di ba? Unta if na-inculcate po na siya sa inyong mind, if katong na mga IVT katong yung mga horticulture inana, if you apply it makakwarta ra man gud gyapon unta, pero wala man gud na practice. Ang atoa pa man kung mentality diri sa Pilipinas is kinahanglan jud mo eskwela college mo jud na diri sa atoa. But hopefully as our human resources develop along with our nation develop, then one way or the other we will be creating a lot of entrepreneurs. Ano mga entrepreneurs? Kamo po mga entrepreneurs pud mo pwede ninyo. We'll be creating a lot of entrepreneurs kay when they graduate from senior highs, they are already equipped with necessary skills. And then when you apply that skills in business, then you're going to be entrepreneurs. Like if you are into bookkeeping, you're into pastries, you're into cooking, you're into like askin unsa nga inyong na-learn dito nga skills, inyo nang i-apply and then you create business out of it, then you're going to be entrepreneurs. Because our national education system actually molds us food and our institutions here in our country. So national systems of education and training and industrial relations system combine to form a dominant logic of action in each country. And this will guide management practices. The social, legislative, and welfare context influences many areas such as recruitment, dismissal, the formalization of educational qualification, aspects of industrial relation pay, health and safety, the working environment, the nature of employment contract, levels of co-determination and consultation, and so on. So the state, the role of the state, the financial system, the education system, the training, the industrial relation system, combining this creates a dominant logic of action in each country. So lain country, lain po siya. So this social, legislative, and welfare context, this influence many areas in the HR. Una siya, sa recruitment, I'll repeat, dismissal, the formalization of educational qualification. That's why there are companies nga stick to kay sila sa ilang hiring nga dapat college level jud ka, nga dapat kanang inani imong gigraduatean, di ba? Dili sila mudawat og lahi imong gigraduatean kay mo may ilang need sa ilang company. So that is educational qualification, formal educational qualification requirement. And I have this a banking company actually, one of its branch manager was a was a instructor of mine in the graduate school. And then makalingaw kay kato sila nga banking institution. Wala sila gipili. Kaya kato siya nga general manager, one of the managers kay iyang graduate sa college is BS Bio, BS Biology. Oh, imagine, he's not even in the business but he becomes the manager of that institution. O, di ba? So, wala sila gipili po ato. So, depende na po na siya sa company actually. Kato ila kay diverse po ila ha siguro. Dili sila parochial, dili sila ethnocentric, but they are on synergistic. So, that's good for that company. I appreciate that company. And then, isa sa operations manager niya was a schoolmate of mine in high school and college, and then iyang graduatean is BS Physics. Oh, funny, di ba? BS Physics na sa bangko. Okay ra pod. Depende ra man gud pod na pod sa company. So, wala sila dili sila ethnocentric or they're not hiring homogeneous number of employees. Kay basin pod sa ilahang futuristic nga approach or futuristic strategic management system or how they manage their HR is that basin di ay kani sila nga mga pool of employees maka-contribute sa growth not only sa company but sa mga tao sa ilang company nga di man kinahanglan nga business jud ka para mahimo kang manager or makatrabaho ka sa isa ka banking institution. Diba? So kato sila, those are just an example nga a BS Biology graduate and a BS Physics graduate is working in a banking institution. Okay? And another example is that my co-workers before on the job I had in Manila, kuan siya, education graduate, na namin sa lending institution, o diba? Amazing. Mag-cope up sila sa mga terms, kaya we have terms in business nga. Mga business terms rapod nga kung i-define siya sa lain na po siya meaning, di ba? Kaya naman tayo mga ginatawag of language of business. But they are performing well in that institution. So, synergistic po to ang company at okay, as long as you do the job, then you're good with it. So, the institutionalist perspective also stresses the principle of functional equivalence, which has a direct relevance for an understanding of the transfer of HRM practices in MNCs. This principle states that although business practices may differ from one firm to another because they are multinational companies and from one nation to another, they are not automatically inferior or superior to each other. Firms and nations may practice what are in effect functional equivalents, which also, though different, produce better result in specific strategic market, institutional, or national context. So, functional equivalence. It does not mean nga diri sa Pilipinas mao ni ang practice ni multinational company, and then pag abot niya sa Singapore, si multinational company mao na po niya ang practice na siya ginatawag og functional equivalence. It does not mean nga ang practice niya sa Pilipinas inferior sa practice niya sa Singapore. Nga naman, because these functional equivalence is different from one nation to another. You use these practices in Singapore and not in the Philippines kay mao man ni siya ang mubagay nga practice para ni Singapore nga market, para ni Singapore nga human resource strategies. Lahi man po sa Pilipinas, but it does not mean na one is inferior from the other. So firms and nation may practice what are in effect functional equivalent, different but produce better result in specific strategic market, institutional, or national context. Okay? Lahi-lahi siya, but it does not mean one is inferior from the other. Okay, what is effective in the Philippines may not be effective in Singapore. Even within the Philippines, what is effective? Let's just say, not only effective, but efficient in Manila does not mean efficient and effective in Negros Oriental. Because Because even if we are just one country, we have different what? Cultural theories. We have different culture. We have different norms and values. And our economic condition in Region 7 or Negros Oriental is affected also by or is shaped by the history in our province, by the culture of our province, and other institutional processes within our province. Okay? So I hope you understand that. Same rin na siya if you go in a global context. Naamang gani difference sa within nation ra. How much more if you're talking on the global context? Okay? Now we go to the National Employment System and International HRM. So what types of national system actually exist? It may be possible to reach some conclusion about how these different types of system are likely to shape the HRM policies and practices of MNCs that have their home in each type of system. Here we're going to discuss these types. So there are two, the LME and the CME, or the Liberal Market Economy, Coordinated Market Economy. So the liberal market economy, in the book, it is best presented by the U.S. economy, so liberal. And then coordinated market economy is best presented in Germany. So this liberal and LME and CME, they do not claim that these are the only ones in which the different elements of national system can cohere. But they do argue that the most successful developed economies tend to approximate to one or the other, with national economies that fall between the two poles have inferior economic performance. This is according to Hall and Gender-Rich in 2004. The basic difference between the two types are their expected effects on human resource management, and presented in the table below niya. So, according to this LME economy and CME economy, in a highly and successful economies or developed economies is either aning duha. It's either you are on a liberal market economy or coordinated market economy, or within kanaging naamoy gamay ani dako ani. If wala ka ani daw, wala ka sa liberal, wala ka sa coordinated, dito daw mo fall ang rag hinay-hinay nga mo unsad nga economy. Okay? This is according to them. This is not, it does not always hold true to all, but this is according to them sa ilang studies. So in general terms, it provides an intellectual justification for the argument that there is more than one potentially successful way to run an advanced economy, either a liberal or coordinated. The general argument here indirectly offers some clues as to how MNCs from different countries might behave. In particular, MNCs from liberal market economies are likely to change the nature of their operation more rapidly because they are more liberal, and have less employment security for their workers within a market-driven organization approach than in the case of MNCs originating in CME. So, kung liberal ka, mas rapid siguro ang changes sa ilaha kumpara sa coordinated, kay murag in a coordinated, formalized batanan ba, murag less ang changes sa employment security is high kumpara sa liberal. So the varieties of capitalism framework has several features which are useful to a discussion on international and comparative human resource management. So kanin siya. So there is no reason following this argument to expect that employment policies or HR practices should necessarily tend towards one dominant pattern, so either LME or CME, even under condition of economic globalization. In other words, management policies that are perfectly logical in the United States may make little sense in Germany. So dili gud ka makaingon nga mo na jud na siya. So imo jud na siya hunahunahon pod nga dili pod abi kay sa liberal best siya didto paabot nimo sa coordinated, wala gud na siya pulos kaayo or it makes little sense. This in itself offers a powerful corrective to some of the more naive assumption that HR practices throughout the world are likely to or should be approximate to model of HRM developed in the United States or whichever other national model is currently fashionable. So it does not mean, mao man ni sa liberal market economy ang HR practices. So, mo na natong gamiton sa Pilipinas. Ay, ato to mo dito sa coordinated market economy kay effective efficient sila ng tao ng Germany, di ba? Maayo kaayo ilang mga HR, ilang mga economy, nindot kaayo. Ato po ning applyon sa Pilipinas, no, dili pwede. Kay wala pa man ta naka-identify kung unsa man jud ato ang para ninyo, unsa man ang sa Philippines, liberal or coordinated. So, you answer that. If you think we are in liberal market economy, then we can probably use the HR practices as presented in this type of economy. Or if we are a coordinated market economy, then probably we can use the type of HR practices nga gikan sa ilaha. But if not, dili pa dagat pasagad o gamit-gamit, di ba? How national differences shape MNC behavior is dealt with in more detail in the next two slides. Kani siya, kanana yung mga examples diri sa table. So, here it goes. The difference between national varieties of capitalism and effects on HRM. So, sa liberal and the CMA coordinated. So, liberal, UK, US, Canada, and other developed English-speaking economies. Kaning sa pikas is Germany, Japan, Scandinavian economies, the Netherlands, Austria, and Switzerland. So, this is more on the European Union, except for Japan, maybe. So, financial system. Here in the LME, equity-based, large stock markets, equity-based. So, easy for investor to switch asset. This leads to strong pressure for short-term profitability. So, switch asset ramang ka, karon equity-based man siya. So, karon imuhang investment probably in finance system niya, you invest in one asset this time and then kinakagkwarta na kaato, i-pull out nimo yung bali na po kasalain. There is a PICAS credit base. It is important role for banks. This often takes a direct role in corporate decision making through representation of board level among other and take longer term view of corporate success. Lahi po ng ilaha. Relations between firms, competitive and contract-based subcontracting tends to be based on price competition and be relatively low trust. So, competitive base. Naapod tagamay anis Pilipinas, I think. Naadjud po taan ni. Collaborative. There is a PICAS. Collaborative. Both in terms of creating institutional infrastructure, wage, bargaining, training, among others, in terms of long-term high-trust relations across the supply chain of large firms. We also have this po sa Pilipinas, malibog na taas sa gudtaani mo punta. Kay murag na amanta sa both. Vocational and training education. General education provided by state. Vocational training system unstable as large firms preferred to develop their own system rather than contribute to sectoral and occupational system. Firms pool resource into highly developed vocational training system, usually on sectoral level, not including Japan. Naapota both ani. We have general education provided by state, which is true. The education here in the Philippines is free from grade K to college, right? But we also have this firm post vocational training. We have vocational training, TESDA. So we have both. It's up for you to decide kung asa jud kadaghan, the LME or the CME. Wage determination, workplace of firm level, more centralized, sectoral or national level. We have both, workplace or firm level, sa liberal. Companies have their own salary grade. Like some uses seniority, some uses position. Once you're in a higher position, your salary level increases. More centralized. In the government sector, centralized siya. If you belong to a salary grade, like salary grade 20, then salary grade 21, inana po siya. Napo kay salary centralized, napo siya somehow centralized. Asa na jud ta ani? Like, pendira ninyo. Or asa man jud ta? Employment relationship in hire and fire principles lead to low trust relationship between employers and employee, reliance on numerical flexibility. Long-term high trust relationship for co-workers, reliance on functional flexibility. This too is also applicable in our country. Naman tayo mga contractual basis. So hire and fire, low hire and fire, like you're only hired for this month, for a few months and the likes. They are also hire long-term good. But here in this LMEs and CMEs, this is generic, general siya sa ilahang economy. General siya sa ilahang economy. Kana bang padugayay seniority na. Union organized primarily occupational, sectoral, but not including Japan. Role of the state to ensure free and fair market, but otherwise to intervene as little as possible. To establish framework by which authority can be delegated to corporate actors such as employers, organizations, and trade unions. At times, we have also unions. The government also have these free and fair markets because we have laws actually like anti-discrimination law, the role of women and the like. So but we have also established frameworks by which authority can be delegated to corporate actors like trade unions. Tama po tayo mga trade unions. So in terms of HRM, attempts to increase cooperation from employees historically made difficult by conflictive industrial relations, more recently by low levels of employment security, creating difficulties on obtaining commitment in the individualization of HR. So individualized pay, career development, and decline of trade unions. In CME market, a CME, more collective-oriented HRM, high levels of collective employees involvement, greater prevalence of autonomous teams, less individualized pay. So, pare-pareha ang pay sa ilaha. This is actually true in Japan because in Japan they are the ones author the most of the quality QMS, quality management systems, some of the quality controls and the likes. And then when we're talking about quality and application of quality and quality output, you have to involve all employees. So collective jud ang involvement sa employees. Mo siguro coordinated dun ang ilahang market. And then areas of competitive strength. Sectors involving radical innovations, IT and science, which is true actually. Here, the other one is more on training, engineering, incremental innovations in engineering. And this is manifested actually on how highly engineered the outputs, the products of the likes of Germany, the likes of Japan, diba? If it is made in that country, we are greatly assured that it is of good quality and produced in a quality environment. So geographical groupings of countries, the Mediterranean variety of capitalism. So France, Italy, Turkey. So finance system, mo po ni siya ang sa geography. Kato ganina sa kuan to siya ha. Kana siya liberal and CME sa capitalism. Kani siya sa groupings of geographical, the Mediterranean. Traditionally credit-based, combined with importance role for the state, recent trend to increasing dependence on foreign equity investors for largest firm. I think we belong to this, no? I think lang po. But it's up to you to Google it and research it if we belong to this Mediterranean. Credit-based man po. But naa po important role ang state, no, di ba? Relationship between firm sector coordinated around large national champions with traditionally high degree of state involvement in creating sectoral strategies. Vocational training education, more emphasis on intellectual than vocational education. Academic qualification, very important for career driven. Hi, mag-diri jud ta. Feel po na. In my opinion, in my assessing it, I think we belong to this, more on this than the LME or the CME. Wage determination, historically sectoral in principle, but real pay levels often determined at workplace firm levels, often informally. Oh, diba? Employment relationship, high degree of employment security for core workers, but low trust relationship, partly due to reliance on Taylorism. I think this is on really not Taylor Swift, okay. But may Taylor the management guru pod. Union organization, primarily ideological. Role of the state to ensure economic development and to govern the employment relationship. HM, hierarchical management and tailorist production organizations historically attempted to reduce the need for high degree of cooperation for employees, while strict labor law reduces differences in HR practices between firms. More recently, leading firms have increasingly borrowed elements of American-style HRM, particularly for managers and other highly qualified workers. I think this holds true to some of our firms food areas of competitive strength, sectors with highly rationalized production. So I don't know which we belong, but for me, more on the Mediterranean economy. So national business system and HRM and MNC. So technically, this is a simplified representation how national business system shape MNC's HR. Home country business and employment system. If the home country's business is the US and employment system is based on the US, ideas and strategies of HQ management headquarters mo na iyang madala pag abot niya sa global policies. But MNC policies in the subsidiary level, katulad sa lalong na, hinahinay na niya nag-call out what is beneficial to the country where they are engaging in business. Ideas and strategies of workers and managers available in the subsidiary labor market, host country business and employment system. Kabantay mo, ang arrow is two-way. Dili siya going down lang, straight arrow, because katang one way or the other, it affects both host country business and employment system. Nag-base na po na siya sa ideas and strategies of workers and managers available on the subsidiary labor market. And the subsidiary labor market, policies in the subsidiary, the MNC policies, dapat po siya mo coordinate anak nila. And then the policies in the subsidiary, the MNC subsidiary, dapat po in-coordinated po na siya in the global policies. So somehow, even if the strategies how they shape the HR and MNCs, mo ni siya ang way niya, pag abot na nila sa host country, they have a touch of both the host country's HR policies and the home country's HR policies. They have to synergize. They cannot have homogeneous or ethnocentric. They need to synergize because what is effective and efficient in the home country may not always be effective in the host country. They can just take away what is necessary and can be applied in the host country. Because like in the culture and institutional theories, lahi-lahi man siya, di ba? So you, as an HR practitioner, should understand this. That's why it is rather beneficial that HR practitioner's career development is not on a vertical basis. Dapat lateral siya. Kay para lahi-lahi ang iyahang knowledge on handling HRs because companies have lots of subsidiary businesses. And subsidiary businesses are located in different countries. And different countries offers different cultures and institutional basis in handling human resources. But it does not mean nga mao man ni ang ilahang gigamit nga strategies ani nga country, wala na siya ni conform sa home country nga employment system, sa home country nga business strategies in their HR. Na ni conform ra gyapon na siya. It's just that they deviate it to conform it on their host country. Dapat man sila mo adopt. Kay sila man ang ligawa sa ilang home country to create business or to do business in another country. And of course, the host country, mo adapt po na siya ginagmay sa mga employment system or HR system and strategies ni home country kay beneficial man ang business para ni host country kay FDI man ni siya, especially if FDI siya. Because this also impacts the economic activity of that host country. For instance, there is a Pilipinas, we have economic zone. If we encourage investors to create business in our country, and then when they are creating business in our country, we give them certain tax holidays para ma-encourage yun sila. And then, okay nga labor, we make sure nga ang technology ilang ganahan, the human resources ng ilang ganahan, presence siya sa atong country. Kay two-way, maka-benefit magud ta, like employment. Sila po, maka-benefit po sila when the home country business goes to in our country. Kay cheaper man ang labor, mas barato ang naa-diri, man ang naa sila diri. Okay? So, pohon, if you're going to be HR practitioners, you need to understand this. Do not limit yourself on what you know, but broaden your perspective because HR is a very wide thing. Tao, mas lisod i-manage ang tao kaysa kwarta ra i-manage. Between an HR major and a finance major, it's easy to handle money compared to handle people because people comes from different cultures and backgrounds. Ang kwarta-kwarta raman dyan na siya, papel o bills and coins. It is owned by different people. But at the end of the day, kwarta na siya. Kaning tao, at the end of the day, tao na siya. Lahi-lahi na silang batasan, lahi-lahi na silang background, lahi-lahi na silang cultural perspective. And if you are handling a multinational company with different nations as employees, somewhat, so do not limit yourself on what you know within the four corners of our classrooms or within the four corners of the institution you are going to work with in the future or you are going to build in the future. You have to broaden your perspective because handling human resources is way tedious than handling money. Okay? So that's the end of my discussions. These are the resources I use. Thank you and have a good day.